Today, we're digging into the world-shaking message of an ancient prophet named Micah, a man who stood on the literal front line as an empire prepared to invade. His story, well, it's pretty much a masterclass in seeing disaster coming. So let me ask you this. What if your hometown wasn't the capital, wasn't some remote village, but was the piece of land an invading army had to crush to get to the real prize? What if you were the speed bump? Well, that was Mashika's reality, and it's the absolute key to understanding his terrifyingly accurate vision of the future. To really get what he was saying, we've got to understand why he was living on that speed bump in the first place. So let's set the stage and dive into the geopolitical tinderbox that was Micah's incredibly dangerous world. Okay, so we're talking about the 8th century BC, and things are tense. The clock was ticking. Micah gets started around 740 BC, but then in 722 BC, the first domino falls. Big time. The superpower of the day, the Assyrian Empire, just rolls in and completely conquers the northern kingdom. All of a sudden, that threat isn't some far-off problem anymore. It's right on their doorstep. And sure enough, by 701 BC, that very same Assyrian army is marching south to invade Micah's own kingdom of Judah. Now, in this conflict, geography was everything. To the west, you have the coastal plain. Think of it as a superhighway for invading armies. To the east, you've got the protected hill country, where the capital, Jerusalem, was safely tucked away. And caught right in the middle? The Shephelah, the lowlands. This strategic and very dangerous buffer zone was exactly where Micah lived. And this is the crucial point, right here. Micah wasn't some academic sitting in the capital city, hearing reports from the field. No, you could call him a prophet outside the Beltway. He lived in the place that was going to get hit first. He had a front row seat to the invasion route, and he could see with perfect clarity what was coming for his people, for his own neighbors. And what he delivered wasn't just some fiery rant. It was something way more formal and honestly, way more terrifying. He presented his prophecy as nothing less than a cosmic lawsuit. Just listen to how he describes the judge arriving on the scene. It's geological chaos. The landscape itself just deforms in the presence of this immense power. This isn't just poetry, you know? This is the sound of the divine judge entering his courtroom, and the earth itself is shaking. Micah lays out the whole case like a legal proceeding. God isn't just the judge, he's also the witness and the prosecutor. Talk about a stacked court. The defendants, the people of Judah and Israel. And the charges are crystal clear: idolatry and social injustice. There's really no escaping an indictment like that. And get this little linguistic detail, it's absolutely wild. The Hebrew verb Micah uses for God coming out of his temple to deliver judgment, it's the exact same verb used to describe a king marching out to war. So let that sink in. This isn't just a trial. It's a declaration of war by God against his own people. Now, to make this message of doom truly unforgettable, Micah used a brilliant and, frankly, bitter literary device: prophetic puns. He takes the names of the very towns in his own region, places his audience knew intimately, and he twists their names into prophecies of their own destruction. It's an incredibly powerful way to make sure the warning would echo in their minds every single time they heard a city's name. Okay, for example, take the city of Shafir. Its name means pleasant. Micah's prophecy: the people of this pleasant city are going to be marched away in nakedness and shame. The contrast is just chilling. Or how about the city of Zanin? The name sounds like the Hebrew verb to come out. But Micah prophesies that when the enemy arrives, the people of Zanin will not come out to fight. They'll be paralyzed by fear, hiding inside. The irony is just brutal. And then you've got Lachish, a major fortress city. Its name sounds a lot like the Hebrew for the team of horses. So what's the prophecy? Micah says, "Harness the team to the chariots, inhabitants of Lachish, because your only option is going to be to flee." He literally links the city's name to the very act of its panicked escape. So you might be wondering, was this all just powerful rhetoric, or did it actually happen? Well, in this last section, we're going to see how Micah's words echoed through actual history. The year is 701 BC. The Assyrian king, Sennacherib, does exactly what Micah warned he would. He invades the southern kingdom of Judah, and just like that, the prophecy becomes a terrifying reality. But remember that one very specific detail in his prophecy? Micah said the wave of destruction would wash over the whole land and come right up to the very gates of the capital city, Jerusalem. But that it would stop there. It would not go inside. And that is precisely what happened. History records that Sennacherib's army marched south, devastating the towns of the Shephelah, that buffer zone, including the great fortress of Lachish. His army then surrounds Jerusalem, trapping King Hezekiah inside. But, just as Micah prophesied, they stopped at the gates. They failed to conquer the city. And we don't just have to take the Bible's word for it. This is a direct quote from King Sennacherib's own victory records. He boasts about trapping Hezekiah in Jerusalem like a bird in a cage. It's a stunning confirmation of the siege, but notice what he doesn't say. He never claims to have actually captured the city or the king. And all this brings us right back to Micah himself. One of the towns on his list of prophetic puns was Moresheth. Well, that was Micah's hometown. This wasn't some abstract forecast for him. He was pronouncing doom on his own community, his own neighbors, his own home. Micah's prophecy was devastatingly accurate, and it forces us to really think about justice and consequences. But it also leaves this critical question just hanging in the air, a question Micah himself would later answer. After a judgment this complete, what on earth comes next?